Hello and welcome to Ascension Incubator. As we dive into realms of human consciousness and explore all the different aspects that just make our head tilt to the side a little bit and go, I haven't thought of that before. So welcome to Ascension Incubator. We'll give it a bit of time before everybody starts to tune in. Welcome. So if you are joining us for the first time, this is a series that we do with it sort of came from the time when we all went into that incubation phase and that was where it all was born from, and I sort of asked for guidance as to where I could be of service and support to the human family during this time. And so Ascension Incubator was born because I think that during these times we've really had some time and space to really look at who we are and what we're doing and how we're showing up in the world and what does it mean, all those really fun things that get us thinking a little bit outside of the box when we're otherwise distracted with the day-to-day living of the doing, the world of doing. And so for those of you who have been following this series, you would know that we have a topic every week, and often the topic gets gifted to me in the form of situations, experiences, or just it pops into my head that that's what we're going to cover, and hopefully in some way that it does resonate with each of you in at some level, and we also spark a little bit of conversation, and then usually it is finalized with and sealed in, all the teachings are sealed in with all these beautiful instruments around me, which is my offering to the world in the form of sound medicine and sound meditation. And so utilizing the different soundscapes available to drop you in towards the end to, I suppose, integrate the topic that we have spoken about. So a wonderful infusion of mind and body and soul. So thank you everyone for joining. Let's get on with tonight's topic. And tonight's topic is, like I said, we pick a different topic each time. And tonight's topic is all about faith. And I'm not talking about this faith. Even though it's a really great song. So we're not talking about George Michael faith. We are talking about faith that is, it actually woke me up at about 2 o'clock this morning, and it was I thought of the breakdown of the word faith, and it kind of came to me that it was fearless and invisible trust, which is what I don't know if that's been coined before, but that's what came to me. And I thought, that's really interesting. Now I'd like to go to sleep, thanks. But meanwhile, in the chasms of my mind, I was exploring the topic of faith and what it all means. And really, it's the kind of thing, and I'm not talking about it in a religious context or in a indoctrinated context. I'm talking about it at a different level. And if I can start off on this topic with one of my all-time faves, a beautiful quote between what is the difference between belief and faith? And Alan Watts says it, as usual, beautifully, where he says that we must here make a clear distinction between belief and faith, because in general practice, belief has come to mean a state of mind, which is almost the opposite of faith. Belief, as I use the word here, is the instance of the truth, is that the truth is what one would leaf, so the end of the word leaf, belief, or wish to be. And the word leaf actually comes from the Anglo-Saxon term leaf, meaning wish, wishful thinking. So the believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits in with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening of the mind to truth, whatever it might turn out to be, regardless. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown, whereas belief clings, but faith lets go. So in this sense of the word, faith is the essential virtue of science and likewise of any religion that is not self-deception. And I thought that was a really poignant, I suppose, determination or difference between the term belief and faith. And so the way that I am, let me package this for you in a way that allows your mind to be open enough without any social or cultural conditioning of what the word might mean. And so as we sit in this space with a perspective that we know nothing of the word faith, we don't relate it to a label, we don't relate it to a religion, we don't relate it to whatever you want to call it. I call it God, whatever you wish for it to be. Faith is that little thing that is often quite big, but it comes out, and it's the kind of thing that a lot of people will not admit to having. But it's only in the time of crisis or in the time of something that happens is that it is, it is actually a word that is used, or is something that we look for. Now the term is, used very, very flippantly, that we say, oh, I've just got to have faith. Okay, I've just got to have faith. But it's not just faith, and it's usually the thing that we have at the very end of what would be determining a crisis, and it's usually when we get brought down to our knees in a moment where we have nothing left but to trust, but to have faith, but to believe in something greater than us. And again, I package this with whatever that greater than us is whatever it is for you. And even the Dalai Lama has said we can never obtain peace in the world if we forget the inner world and we don't make peace with ourselves. So it's about getting that, obtaining that peace within, working on the inner world to connect with the outer world. And I think that how that interrelates with faith is that as we begin to have more faith in ourselves, when we have more faith in and trusting the relationship between our physical being and our spiritual being, the relationship between the two, as we start to build the faith and build the trust between that, we start to find it easier to open up to the concept of what does faith mean. And for those of you who are tuning in, please do share what. Okay, sorry. Am I stopping and starting everybody, or is that my internet, or is somebody else's? So I think I've got full connection here. Yeah, I do. So hopefully some people can tune in and out, and we'll see how we go. We will see how we go. But yeah, the topic of faith, and it's one of those things that really do. We get a constant assignment of our belief in something bigger than us, a circumstance that is bigger than us. And we get tested with this by way of circumstance, by way of experiences, situations, illnesses, whatever it might be. And these are going to be things that happen in your life that are often the most challenging things. And these things challenge us to believe beyond the logical, believe beyond the practical, the pragmatic. And when we step out of that and we start to step into the concept of having faith or having a belief of something greater than us, And it's a shame that sometimes it takes a crisis for us to get to that point, but that's part of the evolutionary journey, isn't it? Sometimes we have to go through. It's the law of duality that we live in. So we have to have the opposite. We have to have the contrast in order to arrive at the opposite. So we can make that choice. So we can make that the educated choice between who it is or what it is we wish to not necessarily believe, but we wish to have faith in. Now, I think of a time when perhaps you were going through something that was quite challenging, and in some ways you lost faith. And see, this is the contrast. Every great guru or anything like that has taught and had disciples or something like that have taught, they typically will teach you they'll teach you through contrast. Okay, so as we start to experience through contrast, we're going to experience the opposite. We're going to experience the letting go of faith, the losing of faith, believing that we get so challenged in a situation that we lose all faith. Okay, and that in itself is the assignment. That is the assignment. So as we start to I suppose delve into the chasm of faith, it can be a really interesting one, because what happens is we can also have the desire to have faith, but then the great teachers would say, well, hang on, you're desiring to have, or you might be looking to have no attachment or no desire, but you're isn't having no desire. You are desiring having no desire, so therefore you're not actually learning the lesson. So it's this wonderful just contrast between the two opposites, and we often get pushed into the absolute opposite for us to, and that's the assignment. And what happens is we get so caught up in the story, we get so caught up in what it means, we get so caught up in our suffering that we actually forget the assignment that we're being given. Much love to you too, dear one. Thank you for the beautiful messages. And so as we start to look at the contrasting nature. So you're in a challenging situation. You feel like, oh, what's the point? I've lost all faith. I don't believe in any of this. But let's have a look at people in their last breath. Let's have a look at the people who take that last moment in time before they transition. And the one thing that lots of them want to know is there a God? Is there faith? They start to believe in something, and it's in those moments just before they transition that you are in the presence of truth. And when you sit in the presence of real truth, which is very, whether you're in the safety of your own home, but most times you don't arrive into that real place of deep truth until you have taken that journey internal. So you don't necessarily experience it externally with people around you, because you're still going through the inner truth journey. So sometimes it can be few and far between different varieties of experiences and emotions that we go through when but the trick is when you start having that challenge and you start the losing of faith, while you are right on the edge of stepping into it. You see, so when we are in the opposite of that contrast, that is the moment when we are getting closer, because what's happening is we are resisting, and that which we resist persists. And so it's a really interesting term. And I think what we can see is that more people around the world, even during this incubation time, more people around the world are praying. Whether you believe in whether it's a religious belief or not, it's not about that. It's about the belief of something bigger than us, the belief that it's not just limited to the mechanistic, perceived mechanistic, quadrants of the human body. That it's just that we're just physical matter here and that's it. We would be, even if you look, even the great philosophers would look at the world of human existence. I mean, it is a really odd thing that we are this small grain of sand on this planet in the edge of a galaxy revolving around a burning sun. It's odd, right? When you start to query the existence, and so therefore it gets us thinking that the purpose of our existence, and when we start to delve into what that means, that's when we start to open the doors to faith and what it means for us. Now, faith can come in many terms, but when we start to put our trust in that, the less resistance we find. However, there is there is a fundamental thing here. Sometimes we go into being in faith or go into being a good person because we want to do the right thing, and we want to be a good person because then it means bad things won't happen to us. Well, unfortunately, you can't combat universal law that when a cyclone hits, that it's only going to take out the bad people. It's going to sift out who's good, who's been good, and who's been bad. Well, no, universal law has no boundaries on that. So it's not necessarily that we will come up against when we do these things, we've got to question ourselves. Why are we stepping into this? Why are we believing in something bigger than us? Why are we opening up to the circumstance being bigger than us? And what does that mean? Have we got an agenda? You see, it was a really good one. Carolyn Miss had said that for the first time she'd done a lot of praying, and she'd pray always with asking things and saying, "Dear God, please, can I have this?" Or, can you please bless this, please bless that. And then eventually at one point she said that she ran out of things, to ask for. And she just decided, didn't know what to ask for, didn't know what to pray for. And she just sat there and she said, and that, my friends, was the moment that she had the most elated journey, the most euphoric journey, and the most the deepest experience that she shared, that she had, was because she was on the precipice of, oh, well, what do I do now? Even Joe Dispenza talks about this when he had a moment when he was sitting in his armchair, and he was going to go into a deep relaxed state, and he had tapped into the pineal gland through his meditative states, and he went into this, and he went into the simultaneous reality timeline of seeing his younger version of himself in another reality looking back at himself. And it was quite a deep journey that he had gone on, and as he came back, he realized, wow, that was amazing, that was the most incredible journey I've ever had. So then he proceeded to try and get to that point again and again and again. Do you think he could get there? I'll give you a guess. No, he couldn't. Because why? Because he kept trying to get there. So as soon as our human mind, our human logic, our human head, the mind, as soon as we step into this, it gets in the way. It's important, we've got to have one, but it steps in the way of that which is the natural flow of the universal law, the natural flow of stepping into grace, of stepping into faith, and really experiencing it, not just talking it, but really embodying it. And I think you don't really understand that until you get that experience. And it seems to be at the point when we let go. It seems to be at the point when we surrender. And I'll share with you an experience that I had with this, and it was a really profound experience. And for those of you who have followed my journey on Facebook would have remembered years ago that my dog Mac went missing, and I turned the world upside down to try and find my little boy Mac. And I went above and beyond, because my agreement to self when anything happens is that I never want to put my head on the pillow at night and know that I haven't given it my absolute best. And if I've made sure that no stone has been left unturned, then I can rest at night knowing that I gave it my best, and that is all I can do. And there was a beautiful term asking someone, what do you think God is? Well, and the response was, I believe that God is the highest potential. Is God experiencing itself through us in the highest potential in us? So us reaching our highest potential. So we translate that to my philosophy of that I gave it my best. As long as I gave it my best, that is all that I can do. And so I did. So with my dog Mac, I had turned the world literally upside down. Within 24 hours, I had over 5,000 people on a new Facebook page. I had the whole community out in the bush where my folks live, following and also taking part. I had people walking through the bush at night and midnight. Didn't even know some of these people. I had people travel 200 kilometers and cooking bacon outside so then they could try and get the smell of the food out there so the dog might come out. Just amazing things. I had dog trackers, I had animal trackers, I had drones, I had the news stations, I had radio stations, everything. And I had a $5,000 reward on his finding because, for me, I don't have children and these were my children. And so I would do exactly the same. I wouldn't rest until I found them. And so for probably about a month and a half, I was trekking through all the lands and we had night cameras out, we had like safe trapping out so we could try and catch him, but it was a needle in a haystack kind of situation, but I was not willing to stop until the moment where I was drawn into a deep experience. I was walking through the bush and I was, exhausted. I'd lost a lot of weight because I was just walking every day trying to find him, and stressed out. And so at this point, I was really at the point of on my knees, wailing, crying, and saying, "Why? Why did you take my boy? Why did you take my boy?" And as I did that, I was in such a state that all of a sudden, it was such an incredible feeling. I'd reached the edge, right? So this is the contrast I was talking about. I was losing faith and I couldn't believe that this happened because I was a good person. And this is the thing, the perception of like the New Age world or the spiritual world, that if we're good and we're spiritual and we're doing good things, well, good things are going to happen to us. Well, it's not about a reward. It's not about doing it with an agenda, right? The true essence of doing anything that we do, of being of service, of helping someone, or doing it, it's about how doing it without agenda. That's the true essence and the embodiment of it, right? So in that point in time, I was at the point of no agenda. I had, in some ways, felt like I was absolutely just brought to my knees in the middle of the bush. I feel sorry for anyone that heard me. And I'm there bawling my eyes out, and next thing I know, and my body is going into like my body's shaking and I'm crying, and so I'm really in a state. And all of a sudden this incredible feeling of peace just washes over me. It was like someone poured, it was probably like they were looking at me up there going, calm this girl down. And so, got a bucket of water literally, or a bucket of peace, and PEACE, and then poured it over me, right? So pours it over me, and that's what it felt like. I got this just innate feeling of just over my body. I went from a really wound up deep state to just suddenly feeling this like I hadn't felt it was almost like I had done hours long meditation, and I was in this, just my body just went whoom, at once, instantly. And I stopped crying and I opened my eyes, and no word of a lie, I could see in high definition. It was like everything was so, it was like looking for the first time. It was like seeing for the first time. It was in high definition, and I could hear birds from miles and miles and miles and miles away where you wouldn't normally hear them, right? I could hear things it was everything just boom, amplified. And it was almost like I had reached that point where I was losing faith. And it was just at that point when I had no agenda and I truly surrendered, and in some ways felt like giving up. That was the moment. It was like, okay, we can move in now. Let's do our work, says Source. So it kind of happened from that point. And from that point, I began to realign myself and retune myself and calm myself down, and get to a point of having faith and trusting. And then eventually I realized that when the time was right, I knew that my dog would come to me in my dreams, because I would always have quite a lot of things happen in my dream state. And I just had this knowing that at the right time, when I've calmed down and pulled myself together, eventually that he will appear. And it wasn't long after that he actually appeared, and in my dream state. And there he was, dancing around and running around with the other dogs and animals that I grew up with, that had passed on, and they were all happy and enjoyable. And it was almost like this sign saying, you know what, we're okay, it's good, you're good, we're fine. And that was a really good moment for me, and that was where I really was able to move on in some ways. I don't think you ever do completely, but there was, you don't forget, but you move forward and you let go and you surrender. And so it was in that moment of surrender that faith came. And let's translate that now to the current situation with the COVID virus, and we're all incubated in our homes, and now we're slowly starting to be allowed out. And allowed being the key word there. And so, the thing is that as we were all in this state, more and more people were searching about faith. More and more people were praying. Why? And it's almost like I almost feel like that in some way we get embarrassed to say that we have faith, or to say the word God, or to say those things, because we think that people are going to think that we're knocking on the door trying to like Bible bashers, if you like. No disrespect. I think the Bible is a beautiful sacred text, but it's the connotation of or the social or the cultural conditioning of what that means. And I think sometimes we get embarrassed. We don't want to let people know that we believe in something bigger than us, or that we believe, or we have that faith. And I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us are realizing that through crises that we and it is usually does happen when, look, for example, when someone's in hospital and they're dying, and what do? They bring someone in to pray for them. It's always the last thing, right? It's the same with music. It's always the last thing, right? So it's the last thing that we think of when we've run out of doing everything else that we thought logically would work. Same with music. Music is one of those things that we kind of take advantage of because it's always there. We always listen to it, and we don't really, if we didn't have it, then we would really realize the power of it. And so, it's kind of like the things that we put into the ordinary everyday basket, or the things that we kind of just move into that space of going, well, okay, only once I've done all these other things, and then I'll, turn to whatever it'll be, prayer, or I'll turn to God, or I'll turn to spirit or source, or I'll go within. And it's so interesting that it always takes something for us to do that. And I think that is the very journey, that is the journey from birth to cremation. In the bit in between is the bit. That's the life. That's the living. That is the assignment that I believe takes us into, like, I see this place as a school ground. The planet Earth it's a beautiful school ground that is very sacred. But I see our time here as an important aspect. Every single one of us, by no mistake, we are here. We are here on purpose, and we are here in a time of this time in our life. It's a very poignant time. Spirit believes that it is a very strong time that we're in right now. It's an unprecedented time that we've been in. We're stepping, even in the Mayan calendars. I mean, this is when, it kind of stopped. It was kind of only went to, I think it was to 2012. So everything beyond this, we're stepping into no space. We're stepping into no time. And have you noticed how quickly time is going? We're already halfway through the year. And what's happening is, I feel like at an energetic level, we are speeding up. We're going through. And for me, I see things visually. So I kind of see it as this point of like a toroidal field. And I see our evolution on this planet as a species, and as, interconnected with the galaxies and with all the different universes out there. that we're the toroidal field is kind of this cyclical motion of our evolution at a larger level, and it happens at a smaller level as well within us. But the toroidal field has that panel of light that goes through it, that central cylinder. And I kind of think that when we go through that, it's kind of like we're shooting through, like we're going through this kind of tunnel, this orbit of tunnels of doing, and then next thing we get spat out the top, and then we go around the edge like the toroidal field. And when we're up there and out and around is when we lose faith, when we lose the connection with self, the connection with others, when we start to lose our place in the world. Why are we here? What are we doing? I don't know what I'm here for, blah, blah, blah. That's happening on the outward curve of your toroidal field. And then we go back into the central cylinder of the field, and then that goes really fast, and we go, poof. So I kind of feel like that's what's happening. That's what's happening to us right now. We're going through the poof bit. And it's often reflective of time. Like, it's often reflective of how quick things are moving. And I feel like things are moving quick, and the world is shaking a bit. We've got a lot of things changing. For those of you listening and watching from Western Australia, we have a cyclone warning coming as well. So we've had fires, we've had cyclones, we've had viruses. If there's no sign here for us, for us to kind of look beyond ourselves and look beyond at something bigger than us, then I don't know what it's going to take for us to listen. And the question is, like, for me, the curiosity is, how are we going to be different after this? Are we going to be more open with our belief in something bigger than us, even though we might already, but at a whole nother level, in our service to the world, in our interconnection with each other, the relationship between self and others. I'm curious to see how this will unfold over the next probably 12 months or so, and how we will change and evolve as a human family. What's going to be different for us? How are we going to take these signs and work with them? And on the topic of faith, on the topic of faith, there was a great story that, again, wonderful teacher Carolyn Miss says, and she shared about that she had done this teaching. She was a medical intuitive at the time, still is, but she doesn't do consults. But she was medical intuitive, and these scientists, probably the most intense audience you can get was a bunch of Russian scientists that she had to present to as a medical intuitive, and they were like, well, They outwardly were saying, well, prove it to us that you do a reading on us. And in the end, she did she ended up doing readings on all of them for 7.5 hours long. She said it was purely by the gift of grace and the gift of God that she was able to make it through. She wasn't operating the wheel. So at that point, she said what was really interesting was that everyone in the outward world didn't want to admit that they had faith, or they were curious about God, or they wanted to know about something bigger than them. They were all the scientists, and it was like, no, prove it to us. But then she said, behind closed doors, when she did one-on-one readings with each and every one of them, every single one of them wanted to know, about something bigger than, about something wider, and they were comfortable to speak about faith. They were comfortable, but outside they weren't. And I feel like that's actually quite a beautiful story, in the sense of that is what we need to be looking at as ourselves. So how are we now showing up in the world? How are we now interacting in our relationships with people? How are we talking about something bigger than us? How are we starting to evolve the human family collectively by way of how we think, how we react, how we respond, and how we interact with others? This starts to really sign the new signature, or the new pages of what our evolution is going to look like. And it's a really important time. We're probably at a really interesting time right now, and it is the journey of as we become more and more, if you call it, self-aware. And there's a beautiful I think it was Nassim that said, in order to be self-aware, you have to have feedback consciousness. You have to have feedback, So consciousness is a feedback between the external world and the internal world. And that's fundamental to basically all things. So then all things are conscious, right? All things are feeding information to the vacuum, and the vacuum is feeding it back. The amount that you're able to feed into the system is related directly to your amount of resistance in how much information can come in. I'll say that again, just so it sinks in. All things are feeding information to the vacuum, and the vacuum is feeding it back. The amount that you are able to feed into the system is related directly to your amount of, wait for it, resistance in how much information can come in. Okay, so that is the topic of when we open up and we open our minds to topics like faith, to topics of awareness, to topics of consciousness. It's looking at life a little bit like the spokes on a bicycle, right? So you look from the outside in and it connects at the center, but if you look from the inside out, it's scattered and individual by nature. It's a beautiful way to look at life. You look from the outside in, connects to the center. Look from the inside out, it's scattered and individual by nature. So if we can start to look at the bigger picture, from the outside in, we can see the interconnectivity of all that is. So yes, and just one of the other interesting things is on the topic of faith. Alan Watts had actually said the present phase of human thought and history almost compels us to face reality with open minds, and you can only know God through an open mind, just as you can only see the sky through a clear window. You will not see the sky if you have covered the glass with blue paint. And so these are really interesting. I love, sharing some information of where I, some of the teachers that I learned from as well. And ultimately, it's up to the teacher to open the door, but ultimately you have to enter it. So during that journey of entering the door of learning, I love exploring the minds of some of these amazing people. And so as we, I suppose, dig deeper into the topic of faith, I want you to think about, what does it mean for you? Void of labels, old structural beliefs. What does faith actually mean to you? And how do you know if you are truly having faith? Like, are you praying with an agenda? Do you have faith with an agenda? And often we'll know is when we're resisting. And when we're resisting, resistance often comes in the form of frustration. It could be feeling like you just don't want to, it's that constant resistance to change, or it creates an emotional state. It creates a physical state. These are the things that are our cues to how much are we truly surrendering into faith. And it doesn't mean that we just give up and just go, okay, over to you. Oh, you do it all. It's not about that. It's about knowing when you get the call to act and to do the human stuff, because we're here to be humans. And whilst we delve through the path of, we take the path of the spiritual and connect the spiritual with the human, we're actually here to be human beings, as opposed to floating too far off into different dimensions, which is great and fun, and let's do it. It's a great experience. But ultimately, our purpose and our work at this point in time is here. So how do we bring this back into, I suppose, a feedback loop of how it is we know whether or not we are on the path of faith, or whether or not we are falling off the path of faith? And the thing is that when you are, it's often when you do feel like, oh, I've just had enough, I'm just frustrated, this doesn't make sense, why is this happening to me, all of that kind of stuff. What am I doing to attract this or attract that? But no, it's not about that. It's how do you begin to look at your life with a bigger lens? How do you begin to look at, and I always think of it like this, like, the cartoon ants, all the little ants, where are all those little ants? If you can see yourself as that little grain of sand, that little ant, in the wider galaxy, and that's really what we are, but we're a very important part. But even, the Course in Miracles says all the children of God are special and none of the children of God are special. And I really that was one thing that really stood out to me. It was like, yeah, that's great. And it's a beautiful way to be humbled in this human experience, to understand that we are but a grain of sand, or we are but one portion of the bigger picture, but without us, it wobbles the rest of the dynamic. So it's all purposefully built like the human body, and it knows how to work, it knows how to operate without you. So it's the same kind of thing with how we practice our faith. As soon as we get out of the way is when it's happening, is when it's flowing. But when we do go off kilter and we go back into feeling like we're kind of losing that faith, it's also trusting in that process, right? So it's another level of awareness. So you're in that, you're losing the faith, but then be the seer on the outside of that experience. So watching yourself outside of yourself and realizing that the losing of the faith is actually part of the contrast that is required for you to obtain a higher level of faith for the next round, right? Everything is on a spiral going up. So it's going to revisit you, but you'll just be at a different level when it does. And so as it revisits you, then you go, okay, right. And then when you've got that awareness to watch it outside of itself and see the bigger picture, then it helps you truly be in the essence of faith, because you are watching this unfolding whilst having a deeper knowing that this is actually part of the journey toward faith at another level. It's part of the journey toward faith. It's an assignment. Everything is assignments, and how we see it, how we choose to respond to it. So it is always going to be an epic journey, but it's how you watch yourself outside of the journey. And sometimes it's looking at life like it is a theatrical play, and who are the characters, who's in the movie today, what kind of movie are we going to watch? Is it going to be a drama? Is it going to be a comedy? So what are we creating in our reality at that point in time? And as we can watch these things with detachment, so the art of detaching doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't feel, but it is actually the art of understanding the bigger picture. We keep trying to tell the world what it means, but instead, why don't we let the world tell you what it means? So we start to take the hands off the wheel, and we start to allow the cruise control to start going, and so ultimately, when we have things that happen to us in these moments that test our faith, when we start to understand the bigger picture, that we're getting the contrast of that in order for us to arrive at a deeper level of faith, well then we don't really get as deeply impacted by it as what we used to. It's not as much of a drama as it used to. It's not as much as a story as what it used to be. And we don't identify with it as much. And what does that equate to? Peace. Inner peace. Which is awesome. And that's where we want, that's where you want to obtain. You want to be it. But it doesn't mean you're going to stay in it all the time. You're going to pop out of it, and you're going to be human, and you're going to do human things, and then you're going to be watching yourself going, why am I doing that? But then years ago, you would never have watched yourself saying, why am I doing that? So it means that you're growing. It means you're on the journey. That is all part of it. And yeah, some of the comments are wonderful. I mean, time. We got here, Paul. Hello, dear. How are you? Oh, lovely to see all of you. Thank you for your comments and engaging. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think that this is really a beautiful time for us to reacquaint ourselves with our faith, whatever that means to us. For me, it means, again, another level of surrender, a deeper sense of awareness of almost stepping to another level of watching the watcher of the watcher. Stepping out and beyond the different levels, and really using this time to refine the tools, refine refine those moments that we have, that push us to the opposite of what we want to be. Okay, so when we are in that contrast, but when you're in it, gee, it's good when you know that you're in it and you're watching yourself in it and you're going, okay, I know what's happening here. I'm getting the contrast. So, but it doesn't mean you don't still feel it. I think the contrast allows us to revisit old emotions, revisit old behaviors, revisit old responses and reactions. Be in it. And if you're in it, be in it fully. Have your tantrum, go nuts. And then look back at it and go, okay, all right, maybe I had that tantrum 30 seconds less than what I used to. Well, that's progress. Okay, you got a whole lifetime to do this enlightenment thing. And it's not about getting to a point of enlightenment. You're in it. You're in the enlightenment. So as you start to move through this and you have that awareness of that bigger picture, and I like to call it kind of like the observatory deck, and it helps us detach, but also helps us move through those times a lot quicker, and move through them with ease and grace. And so as we can do that, I think the ultimate is moving through with ease and grace and the true embodiment of that. So it is that I see it a lot and I hear it a lot, and I'm talking it a lot, but I embody it as well. And it's just how we do embody what it is we preach, what it is we talk about. But at the same time, I've had things where, because I run the Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy for kids, and I have a moment of an emotion, and then some smarty pants decides to say to me, not a kid, but an adult, in the heat of a moment would say, oh, well, you teach emotional literacy. Why don't you should be managing your emotions better. I'm like, dude, I'm managing them great. I'm feeling exactly what it is I need to feel right now, and it ain't pretty. And that's just where I'm at. But, and it's not sitting on top of a mountain and saying, and nothing's going to wobble me just because I teach it, and realizing that we do teach the things we need to learn the most. So that is part of my evolutionary journey. I'm not going to get it right, whatever right is, and I'm not going to get it perfect. I'm human. I'm going to react and respond. There's going to be people out there that trigger me. There's going to be things that occur. And as we relax into that, realizing that there is no way to spiritually be, you can read all the books you want, but it doesn't matter. It's the embodiment of it. And the embodiment of it is how you arrive to your place of peace, how you arrive to be and wake up to be a better version than what you were yesterday. It's the constant work, it's the tweaking, it's the mind, like the tiny micro tweaks. It's not the big major stuff. It's the tiny micro tweaks that make the work what is real. That's the real stuff, okay? And being real in it and not trying to spiritually bypass it with some kind of, new age term. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's about having that groundedness around the practical spirituality. I'm very connected spiritually with what I do, and I believe in a whole heap of I've had amazing experiences with different dimensions and all sorts of things. But I realize, and I know that I'm here being human. This is the assignment, being human, not floating out and staying out there. I can go out there whenever I want, right? But it's being able to bring that back. And then how do I embody that here? And the true essence is, how do I be the best version, the highest version that I believe God or Source wants me to be? And that's part of my prayers. Switch on my highest potential. How can I be the best that I can be in this experience here and now? And so I leave you with that thought and many others. And I hope that tonight was truly nourishing for the soul and for the body, and for the heart, and for the, multi-dimensional self. Let me get spiritual there. The multi-dimensional self. So all of these things really do make up the part of us that is the human experience. It doesn't give us a pass to be douchebags. It doesn't mean that we can just, fly off the handle. It's about, how do I look at how I am and how do I refine that each day? And it's not done with an audience, right? It's done in the quietness of your own mind. That is where the true work is, and no one really knows it until it translates to action. And that's when you start to see the changes around you. The people change, your environment changes, your engagement with people changes, the way you talk changes, all these things. And this is when you know you're on the embodiment part of the journey. Okay, I think I've talked enough. And I think we can move into some beautiful sound medicine, which is my other love. For those of you who do want to experience my sound, who can't attend in person because I'm not starting up until July, just whilst we're on this break, but I did convert an online version, so it's a deep 1 hour online, like total transformation for the soul. So it'll just take you, well, it is for me, but it's got, it might not I can't deem that it's going to transform you. It's going to do whatever it needs to do. Sound does that. But it is a beautiful online journey that you can listen to with some headphones, and it's a 1 hour meditation. I think the link is in my messages. So yeah. Oh, hey Genevieve, welcome. So thank you everybody for gifting your time and space in your evening to me tonight. Now please do, if you wish to, you can close your eyes. You can have your eyes open as I take you on a short 5, maybe a 10-minute mini meditation with a beautiful track that I wrote that was born out of the current crisis. When it was the Australian bushfires. It's sort of around that time that it came through, and it was downloaded, if you want to call it that. So, it came through, and often my music is, I do what I do for the grace of God, and without any religious connotation. It's just for the grace of Source and the God I serve to do that, and it comes through me in this way, in the hope that it will bring you a beautiful sense of peace. So One Cry is the name of this track, and I hope that it at least just drops you in, and we can seal in tonight's learnings with some sound medicine. As we just allow our bodies to drop in now and integrate the teachings tonight, we open our hearts and our minds and our souls to the gift of sound and widen the scope of faith.
Cry.
taking lands without guns, erasing languages of one, and all traditions we've forgotten. Where did we go wrong when we were born to get along? We tear ourselves apart from love, yet all we want is to belong. One cry, Luai, Luai. One life, Luai, Luai. One chance, Luai, Luai. One dance, Luai, Luai. At where we are, will we ignore all the alarms? Repeated history we read, for what we sow is what we reap. What have we become? What will we pass on to our young? The pointed fingers, who is wrong? Yet we are singing the same song. One cry, Luai, Luai. One life, Luai, Luai. One the mercy of our hands. And what about the voiceless? Can you see the damage done? Our choices make an impact on the lives that are yet to come. Away, out old beings and put our faith in the unseen. For all do we create a different life without hate, a new direction with no pause, a journey from the head to the heart. One cry, away, away. One life, away, away. One chance, away, away. One dance, away, away. Just have one chance. Many blessings. I hope that came through okay. I had a few malfunctions on my technical side, but I hope that it took you into a little pocket of peace, of connection within yourself and connection, therefore, with others. I look forward to sharing another session with you in another week's time on Ascension Incubator. Thank you to everybody for taking part, for engaging, and for all the beautiful comments, as it always does fuel me with a wonderful sense of faith that we are a good bunch. And for those of you who would like to, this weekend I'm actually finalising the final touches of what is a year and a half, if not more, of work on my album, which will have all these tracks on it. So watch this space for potential launch date as we launch the album in the coming months, perhaps. All right, everybody, have a beautiful weekend, a beautiful Friday night on this wonderful, auspicious 22 day, 22nd of May. I hope that you all enjoy taking this pocket of peace and these teachings and embodying them, because that is the true art of this journey we're on. We can learn all this stuff, but it's how you embody it on a day-to-day level that matters. Keep shining. Much love to all of you. Many blessings. Take care.